Just ahead on Art Rocks, a Lake Charles artist credits divine intervention for artistic inspiration.
I loved helping people, but art has always been my passion.
A decorative greetings from a heavenly setting. The artistry bottled up in a centuries-old industry. And remembering the creativity of Baton Rouge's Ollie Steele Burden. That's all coming up next on Art Rocks.
Support for this program is provided by Georgia Pacific Port Hudson operations. Like the impulse that drives an artist's creativity, Georgia Pacific's 850 Louisiana employees are driven to produce quality paper products for your home and business. With additional support from the Renaissance Baton Rouge Hotel, centrally located for business and pleasure travel, the Renaissance offers intrigue, style, and southern hospitality. And by the Watermark Baton Rouge. Art, history, and commerce come together in the heart of downtown Baton Rouge at the Watermark, located in the historic Louisiana Trust and Savings Bank building. And by Prescience Point Capital Management, a fact-based private investment manager using forensic investigation to benefit clients. Research with impact. And by Ann Conley Fine Art, with the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine. For almost a decade, Lake Charles artist Heather Boston worked with her hands to provide medical care to the sick, while dabbling in art on the side. In recent years, though, Heather has turned her hands to the creation of art. And that painter readily admits that the transition has not been without challenges, but she says that the rewards have been entirely worth it.
I was a nurse for about 8 to 10 years, and I realized I loved helping people, but art has always been my passion. And then I started teaching kids art on the side, and I was doing art at home. And then I started dabbling in donating art. And when I really first found that my deep, deep passion for art is when the local arts council had an art battle downtown. And I competed in my first art battle, and I was like, oh, I love this. It was competing live and everybody's downtown and when people were watching you, and there was something about it and the drive within me, and I had to do it. And ever since then, I realized that I'm a live artist and people wanted me to do it and they loved watching me paint. That's where my passion became full force. Everything was self-taught. I like trying something new. And I realized that I love painting with my hands. And I actually paint 90% of the time primarily just with my fingers. And then I realized that even with my elbows, my arms, whatever would touch the canvas, it was like my handprint had its own makeup of a stamp. And images would show up within the layers. People, animals would show up, like I didn't put them there. And then I was told that I was a prophetic artist. So it's been quite a journey of dabbling with that type of stuff. And I didn't realize how I was painting in layers until it was brought to my attention. And then I realized I was painting a lot of layers, and I felt like it was painting the layers of my soul in a way as I was healing. And as I'm healing from the inside out, is like with her painting behind me, I like to tell a story within my art. And that's a storyboard of her as she built her forest and as she became a furniture designer. The process of that painting, she built this whole land up by herself. I took all of her trees, I walked her land, and I brought it inside for her and put it on her wall. The colors, it's hard to explain how I see it and how other artists may vision. I'm a visionary, so I may look at a blank white canvas and I will see it before my eyes, sometimes before I even paint it. I painted it all with my hands. She's had work done in the historic museum. I took old things from there, newspaper clippings, quotes that she has loved from old teachers, and the colors come from just intuition. I've been on a spiritual journey, and I worked on this painting outside. It's my first painting to ever paint outside. This painting reflects what is my soul. So I started to paint the trees, and this is me going through my rebirth. And I found a seed, and I incorporated that at the bottom within the roots, like of new growth. And then that represents the Holy Spirit. And then the raven is their protector. And I'm very spiritual. I see angels, and so this incorporates the angels that I see around me. And then these are the eggs again of new life. And the dandelions as a detoxing, a tea that I drink a lot of. And so I incorporated the roses, which are really significant and beautiful, and how this changes from like a cheetah and then to a lion's face. And this to me represents spirit once again, Holy Spirit, and is breathing life into the sun. And this is my tree shaman friend, Miss Sandra. These are people that have, at that moment in my life, helped me out a great deal and are really special to me. And this is the tree, which I really, really love, is seeing beyond what we normally see. This is the heart, and it's bringing peace within myself and within my soul. I had a series I was chosen for Raw of New Orleans for NOLA. It was a Raw event, and it was my breaking out series. It was like my new art. And so I did this layer work, but I took old quilt patterns that were in a 1940s newspaper, and it was called The Broken Circle. And it's a storyboard painting of me and my children and how we become one unit. And it has the cocoons at the bottom to represent us, and then a child I lost, and then it has the polar bears and then the two children, and it's really powerful. My daughter helped me put some of it together, so it's really special. I like to hide things within the paintings for the client, and I research. I'll go stalk their Facebook or ask family questions and hide things within it that they wouldn't know that I would know. And so when they see the painting, they're fully surprised. If I had to choose anything, put me in a room and with a canvas, I would choose just paint, a water bottle, a Viva paper towel, and my hands. And there's something about the drips on the canvas and the spraying and the drips on the canvas with the spray bottle. I don't understand it yet, but I have to have it. I have to spray it. It keeps the canvas wet, and I'm able to move it with my hands. And then I use the certain paper towel, and then that's how I do the layers. And then I'll take off certain colors as I want, and then I will use my palm prints on certain spaces where I paint, and then I'll use the palm print, and that's how I add paint to the rest and all the designs to the rest of the painting.
Tired of lolling around watching the world go by? There's no excuse for that, because Louisiana is always brimming with cultural events and attractions. Here's a list of various notable exhibits, live performances and festivals coming soon to towns near you. To learn more about these and other events in Louisiana, pick up a copy of Country Roads magazine. Another resource, the Art Rocks website, features every episode of the program, so just log on to lpb.org and follow the prompts. Come with us now on a spiritual journey to Reno, Nevada, to visit with an order of Carmelite Nuns. While the sisters at Carmel of Reno have devoted their lives to study, contemplation and prayer, they still find time for artistic expression. Their creations are associated with times of joy, celebration and even sadness in the form of exquisite greeting cards. Here's their story.
A little more than 60 years ago, 8 Carmelite nuns traveled to Reno. They held one-way tickets in their hands and determination in their hearts.
The sisters came in 1954 with the understanding that they would eventually build a monastery. The sisters came here from Indianapolis, and they had a little house over on Virginia Street.
It wasn't long before the sisters set their sights on a peaceful hillside in southwest Reno.
They purchased this property here, started construction, I believe, in 1956. The monastery was completed in 1958, and that's where we are today. Early on, we had to find a way to bring in income to support the monastery, to build the monastery.
The sisters received a donated press, and their print shop was born. They learned the craft of printing with the help from professionals. One of the first was Silver State Press.
They had a huge commission from Harvey's up in Tahoe to do printing for their casino, and they had so much to do that they asked the sisters, could we borrow your press and let us print these brochures or tickets and things like that.
And in return,
people who were in the business came and taught them how to print. It just went on incrementally from that, and it's just amazing what the sisters were able to learn. You have to understand, they knew nothing about this, and yet they came and they learned. It was a real labor of love. It wasn't just like, well, we need to make money. It was like a total investment.
from that investment blossomed creativity. Since the 1960s, many sisters have transformed their own paintings, drawings, and other works of art into greeting cards.
It's just wonderful how creative they all are. We're just so blessed by the people who have come.
Half a dozen sisters are actively creating new art that will be featured in this year's catalog.
We come together and we choose what cards we want to use, what's going to look good on our brochure. We have really 2 seasonal times. We do about 6 cards in the spring that we call all occasional cards, where it's the birthday cards and the thank you cards and sympathy and healing. And then we have our Christmas cards. We want to have a lot of different styles because we certainly have learned that people have very different tastes. There are so many different designs, and it's kind of fun to look at them and say, who did this? Does it match the person's personality, or has a person really stretched and gone totally outside of their creative orbit and done something that's different? Once those cards are chosen, they're processed, they're photographed and made into a digital image. We have Sister Maria who does all the setup, and there's a lot to it. Maria does her magic with her computer and puts it through different programs, and I don't know what all she does, but it comes out this beautiful picture. And once it's set on the computer, then it is sent to the press. Once it gets to the digital press, the card comes out. It's then taken to the cutter. We do big stacks of paper cut down 4 times. And then it's sent to the folder, and the cards are folded. And then they are sent to the packing room where they wait for the orders. The person who is making the invoice almost always writes a personal note on it. It's not just a job for us. We really believe that we want to be like everyone else who earns their living, who has to work. That's a really important part for us. And it is what motivates us too. Like, we're one with everybody. We're in solidarity with people.
That feeling of solidarity is partly why the nuns at Carmel of Reno choose not to wear a habit.
We don't look like the traditional Carmelite monastery. We try to live a really authentic life. And one of the things that I have found is that people really accept us very quickly for who we are and come to appreciate it.
And the print shop helps the sisters to live an authentic life in a number of ways.
It allows for each sister in their own way to create. We are producing something that we believe in. We're creating cards and messages that we know touch people. It enriches our lives very, very much. The benefits of the friendship and our connections with the people is beyond measure. It's the heart of why we do the print shop thing, I think, and it's what keeps us wanting to do it. The connection is very nourishing to each of us.
The humble bottle, that utilitarian vessel that delivers all of our liquid libations, has been a fixture in human societies for millennia. Documenting this history is the National Bottle Museum in Ballston Spa, New York. So let's pop the top and take a look inside.
We are the National Bottle Museum. It seems strange to me at first when I first moved here to Ballston Spa in the 80s, and it's like, a national museum's in Ballston Spa? And then I realized basketball, baseball, they're not in big cities either. They're in small towns too, so. We've got to be close to 3,000 bottles if we're not over 3,000. The bottles range from the early 1700s until some very contemporary pieces from the 2000s even. There obviously are milk bottles, there are perfume bottles, there are decorative bottles, dresser bottles, historic flasks, Saratoga types, soda and beer bottles. There are many more. If you can name it and it came in a bottle, it's that. Food bottles is another category. And somewhere there's someone who collects them. We're a history museum. That's really what we are as a history museum. Every bottle is a history artifact. It may not be an old history artifact or an antique one, but it's still a history artifact.
A site for the colony was selected, 40 miles up the James River estuary, and called Jamestown.
Jamestown had a glass factory. It used to be everybody drank beer and alcohol for the reason the water wasn't safe to drink. And so they needed containers to put the alcohol in. That's why bottle making is America's first industry. The major tools were the blowpipe, which has been around since Egypt. I mean, it's really old. It's still in use today. If you see them doing art glass, they still use a blowpipe. They put the hot glass on the end of it, and then they blow into it, and they blow it up. I don't want to say like a balloon, but very similar. They put air in it to force it into the mold. And the mold itself was, early ones were made of wood, and then they became made of metal. And you would have consistency time after time. In the early 1900s, the automatic bottle making machine was created, and that changed the entire industry.
Five green bottles sitting on a wall. 5 green bottles sitting on a wall. And if one green bottle should accidentally fall, there'll be 4 green bottles
Saratoga County, they started making the bottles for the Saratoga waters. They originally started up on a mountaintop in Greenfield, Mount Pleasant Glassworks, and they actually built a log road coming down from the mountain. And what happened is every time they brought bottles down, bump, 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 broken bottles, taking bottles up, bump, 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 broken bottles. Eventually they moved the entire factory to just outside the city of Saratoga in what's called Congressville. And they made bottles until probably the early 1900s. The heyday was the 1850s, 60s, and 70s for making the bottles. All the pieces upstairs in the uranium glass display are actually mine. I've been collecting that before I knew it glowed underneath a black light. They made them with uranium dioxide. Underneath the kerosene lights, it would flicker and glow. So kerosene would make it shinier and prettier. So that was what it started, especially for candle holders and stuff. It was for decorative tableware. The museum actually has 3 sections to it. It has the museum itself, which is the majority of the space. We have the Glassworks Studio on Washington Street. They do hot glasswork there, so they make all kinds of things there. Marbles, paperweights, very creative. Lots of artists use it, the space. And there's also classes taught. Then we have upstairs the Jan Rutland Memorial Artist Space. Jan Rutland was the director here for many years, and she started the artist space, so it was named in her honor a year after she'd passed. I think the biggest thing about bottles is, as I said, they're history artifacts, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an antique to be valuable or to be a history artifact. Value is in the eye of the beholder. That's what helps make them so interesting. We're adding bottles all the time to this collection.
Let's end things up right back where we began, here at home. This week's Louisiana Treasures comes in the form of work left behind by the great landscape architect and artist Ollie Steele Burden, who made an indelible impression on the city and the spirit of Baton Rouge. Take a look. The expansive landscapes of Burden Museum and Gardens, the tranquil environment of the LSU Rural Life Museum, the iconic magnolias planted throughout LSU. These lasting landmarks of Louisiana landscape architecture can all be attributed to legendary Louisiana native Steele Burden.
Steele Burden is from Baton Rouge, and he spent his entire life here. He never married. He was one of 3 children, and they all resided on this property, Windrush Plantation at the time.
A renowned landscape architect, Burden was responsible for conceiving and laying out the lush landscapes of Windrush Gardens and designing the outdoor layout of LSU's flagship campus.
All the oak trees and magnolias and big crepe myrtles that we all celebrate at LSU, he put there, one man, from 1932 to 1970.
In addition to his work in landscape architecture, Steele Burden is also known for many pieces of period artwork that reflect the rural life that he grew up knowing.
The story goes that Paul Cox, who was a professor at LSU, said, "Burden, if you're interested in sculpture, then take this piece of clay," and he threw a piece of clay at him and said, "Make something out of that." And he made a turtle, and he had it fired. And from then on, he started just practicing and playing with clay. He called it pinch art, and he would literally just pinch it out. They were done in various clays, but he liked a Georgia clay, which was more of a white clay, and they would be fired with a white glaze, but a crackle glaze. So if you look at an old plate or an old platter from your grandmother, the glaze tends to crackle over the years, and he would actually get India ink and fill in the cracks so that they would show up even more. So that's kind of his signature finish. One time he got a collection of red clay by mistake, and so he went ahead and used it.
Burden's clay figurines were more than just caricatures to Floyd. They were folk art that commemorated life on the plantation.
He did a lot of things like the old quarter buildings and horses and mules pulling a cart or pulling a plow. Because of his sense of humor, he started adding a lot of fun things to it. Things that happened all the time that people have forgotten about, but he used to laugh at, like running to the outhouse because you have to go to the bathroom and opening the door and there's somebody in there.
Every day for over 40 years, Burden would make up to 3 of these figurines. He is estimated to have crafted between 20,000 and 25,000 clay sculptures during his lifetime.
He loved giving them away. So people would come in this corner and sit and just talk to him. Basically, if he liked you and thought you were interesting, he'd offer you one. So they're all over the world.
Despite enjoying a national reputation, Burden ensured that some of his pieces would always remain in Baton Rouge. One of his most unique contributions to the community can be found at the Ollie Steele Burden Nursing Home.
He did a series of biblical plaques. They're put on the post in the walkway, and they tell every bit of the story from New Testament to the Old Testament.
In addition to his clay sculptures, Burden created numerous paintings that celebrate the singularity of the local landscape.
His paintings, he never took seriously, but he loved copying paintings that he really liked. There's a painting called Blue Rhapsody, which is a swamp scene. It's kind of that bluish gray that you'll see right before dark. And that was a Newt Helder painting, but still added his own interpretation to it.
To visitors of the Rural Life Museum, it was only after his death that his artwork would begin to be sought after and sold.
Believe it or not, the art that he did not take seriously, his paintings and sketches, are really the most popular. They bring in the largest price. They're all over the city and all over the state and all over the country, and most people just cherish them.
While Steele Burden's achievements in landscape architecture may have left the most lasting landmarks on Baton Rouge, it's his clay sculptures and paintings that truly reflect the man's love for his homeland and extended it out all across the world. So that's all we have time for in this week's dose of Art Rocks. But remember, you can always watch episodes of the show at lpb.org/artrocks. And meanwhile, Country Roads Magazine makes another great resource for learning what's going on in the arts all across this state. So until next week, I'm James Fox Smith, and thank you for watching.